What's the quickest you've ever seen a new coworker get fired? Within the first 2 hours of training with me, she asks where she can go and have a smoke. I tell her just outside there's a smoking area. She proceeds to walk outside in front of all the supervisors, lights up the biggest blunt and openly smokes it. She got walked out 5 minutes later. Hired my friend's sister as a hostess at our restaurant. She called off for her first shift 3 hours later, telling me that she was having a tough period. 30 minutes into her dinner shift she started posting pics on Instagram of her being at a party in Canada. We live in NY. Fired her via Insta. Never even worked, then tried to claim unemployment, then had her father call me and try to threaten me into rehiring here. She was 34. When I worked in data entry there was a tricycle on our office floor, just added as a relaxed bit of fun by the managers, who were all very chill people. One of the girls that got hired around the same time as me would, instead of working, just ride the tricycle around the office all day. Every day when we all showed up in the morning she wouldn't even log into her computer. She would just get right on the tricycle and ride around talking to people until she left to take her lunch break. The day she got fired she had to be escorted out of the building because she was screaming about "You're targeting me unfairly, lol." I used to work as a deckhand for a tugboat company on the Mississippi River. The amount of people that would take jobs like that who were deathly afraid of water was staggering. There was a mandatory 2-week training period for all new employees, but about 1/3 of them never made it past their first week. 1 second you're on a boat heading to your first job, and then the new guy is freaking out telling the captain to turn the boat around and head back to the dock. I worked a mall job in the 1990s at electronics boutique. Pokemon had just come out and we got this new guy for Christmas help who was just the strangest person ever. His first shift he just sat behind the counter opening up packs of Pokemon cards, and when confronted he yelled, "I am going to pay for them." Duh, he was walked out by the manager about 15 seconds later. That was a really dumb kid. Orientation second day. He used to sit in a conference room and read through binders of important info. Our boss walks out and closes the door. It has a window with blinds open to see through. Going about our day and the boss asks us why the conference door's locked and blinds closed. Nobody is sure, so they get security to open the door to see this ducking guy kicked back with the lights off asleep. He had closed the blinds and locked the door. Of course he was out there that day. I was at my job for like 3 years and I once slept through my alarm clock and didn't show up until 11 AM. We started at roughly 7. I am salary, but I thought for sure I was going to get written up or reprimanded. Not to sound self-congratulatory or anything, but I feel like I am a good worker and my performance reviews have all been very positive. It's just for context. I went right to my boss and apologized profusely. He cracked up, thought it was hilarious, and he told me he figured I either slept through my alarm or something happened to me. I didn't get in any trouble. He just told me not to make a habit of it, but he never let me live it down. I bought a new alarm clock right after work. About 3 hours. She started the same day as me, and partway through the morning I started telling a few jokes. She then said I've got a good one and proceeded to reel off a string of really racist jokes. She went for lunch and didn't come back. I presume someone caught her on the way. OJT. I work in a government archives facility. The new guy brought food into the work area on his first day, even though there are signs everywhere saying you can only eat in the break room. And it's just common sense. But the boss gave him the benefit of the doubt and just gave him a warning. Couple of days later he was eating at his desk again. Bye bye. Don't know if he was arrogant or just an airhead, but he definitely didn't need to be around 18th century documents. This guy shows up. The VP is gloating how great and brilliant he is. Blah blah blah. First day, doesn't come in until 10 AM. Next day same deal, like working from 10-12 then leaving. Meanwhile they flew him on a business trip leaving Wednesday, and supposed to come back Friday. At the last second he rebooked himself on a midnight flight. Meanwhile on the Friday flight back at the last second he was like, oh, I have to take a different flight, and he just disappeared. What Mr. Mysterious didn't realize is most of us used to work at his previous employer. Someone sent us a text, hey, I thought you hired blah blah blah. He's making copies right now. Turns out he was working 2 jobs. These are both science tech companies with not that strict NDAs, but you can't work at a potential competitor simultaneously. He was fired from both jobs. A few days. The guy turned his camera on during a company-wide Zoom meeting at 10 AM and was laying in bed. Not even sitting up, he was laying down on a pillow, no shirt on, holding his phone above him. The crazy part was you didn't actually have to have your video on. They are optional in these meetings. 90% of the company keeps them off. His response to all this was that he was never told what our working hours are. They were 8-4, bud, and if there is a company-wide meeting scheduled, probably safe to assume it's considered working hours. Worked at a place where you couldn't be colorblind because you were reading schematics and identifying connectors of varying different colors. There was hundreds of tiny connectors in one array. Somehow, by the grace of God, this guy got hired. Either they forgot to implement the CB test or he successfully guessed his way through it. He trains for a week and is put onto the line to build $20K cables for ducking missiles. His very first connector he spent all day on, soldering and connecting and signing the paperwork in the steps, gave it to QC for inspection. It was one of the most ducked up examples of a connector anyone had seen. Next day, guy admits he's colorblind and whether he can keep the job. He's let go because he cost the company $20K. The connector was put on display in HR to drive home the importance of sticking to hiring procedures. Guy came in and got certified on the first half of the job. We put him in a forklift for part 2 and he went to his car on break. Came back drunk to the point of being obvious. That's when I found out we have a breathalyzer on site. Great part, they made him call a friend for a ride. They drove out of sight, immediately turned around and came back. Dude sprinted into our parking lot and drove his car away. We had to call the cops because he technically left work in a vehicle while drunk. My oldest son was a materials manager at an auto assembly plant for a few years, and they had a FLT driver somehow spear a car with his forks in the staging lot and jumped off the FLT, jumped the fence and ran away. Union got him his job back after 30-day stay in rehab. Said son also had to dive into a parts bin to avoid being run over by a FLT driving, staring at his cell phone while driving. His first day of training, he was hired to be an assistant manager. He told the manager training him that he wasn't going to do what she was showing him because that was woman's work, and he wouldn't be a hands-on manager because that's what the employees were for. He was only there to supervise. He only made it 2, maybe 3 hours into the shift before she lost it on him and told him to go home. I'm amazed he lasted more than a few seconds after saying any of that. She had to get approval from the store manager, so she had to wait on a response. Then they checked cameras and documented everything. I actually never saw them outright fire someone on the spot when I worked there. Small store. There was even a guy that got narcaned while on shift and he was allowed to keep his job. Worked in a shop that turned big glass sheets into shower enclosures, panels for balconies, etc. New guy had been there for about 30 minutes. Just enough time to go through the orientation that explains how to properly carry glass, where to put your hands, how to pick it up, and set it down without breaking it and hurting yourself. Guy is carrying a shower door when he realizes he forgot something at the previous station. So he stops on a dime and does a 180, not an approved maneuver from the orientation, as one might imagine, and slams the glass right into a rack that is holding a bunch of untempered shower doors. Door in his hand splits in 2, leaving a deep gash in his palm, and some of the doors on the rack also break, dropping huge swords of glass all around him. He was lucky just to have his hand sliced. His hand was bandaged and he was out the door shortly after, bound for a hospital to get stitches. Never saw him again after that. Started on the day that the whole company went on a 4-day retreat to Italy. On day 1, he got a warning for inappropriate behavior towards his female colleagues. On day 2, he was fired for inappropriate behavior towards female colleagues. Had to find his own way home too. Our insurance just approved one of our guys to drive solo after he passed all his background checks. He went out, texted all his friends how excited he was. While distracted, he hit a curb, overcorrected, tore a fence out of a decorative median and hit and totaled a BMW in the other lane. He then lied about what happened. Thankfully we had very good security footage. That was his 9th day of work. It could have been just a funny story, but the dude tried to say we fired him because he was black. Got a labor attorney involved. Turned it into a real headache. Long story short, 9 days and an explosive exit. I work in a kitchen and literally just yesterday, new guy start at 5 AM. Claims to have 20+ years experience. Gets frustrated that he is struggling with some basic recipes. Slams the oven door and breaks it. Then walked out at 6:30 AM. I would be lying if I said I haven't witnessed this more than once at all the different places I've cooked at. I watched a dude get hired, told chef he had a ton of experience. Chef asked him to go debone a bunch of chickens for some pulled chicken dish, and up, this dude couldn't debone a single chicken in 2 hours. Chef was like, the duck is this? You lied, didn't you, and fired him that day. A bird's a bird. If you've eaten a whole rotisserie chicken or a Thanksgiving turkey, you probably can fumble your way through deboning one in fairly short order. Blew my mind. Years back I worked a ski season in Europe. They bus the staff all the way out to the Alps from London via the Channel ferry, all in all about 18 hours transit. It's not unusual for everyone to enjoy themselves and get a bit merry, as long as you don't cross the line. One chap gets absolutely bladdered, ends up getting aggressive, attempts to fight a couple of his new colleagues, and ends up passed out in his seat with puke all down him. We finally arrive at the resort, and as we are getting off the bus, the regional manager tells him to stay put and not to bother taking his bags off. New driver gets on and off he goes, straight back to London with 18 hours to think about how bad he ducked up. I worked on an help desk. It was me and another guy. He quit because there was no room for growth. They hired this guy who supposedly had 25 years of experience in it. I was tasked with training this guy. He was an older guy and was so deaf he couldn't hear the phone ringing. I had to show him how to do the same things over and over again, like how to install a printer. I even made training documentation, but instead of reading that he would just ask me to show him. He was a high school football coach on the side and that's all he talked about. After a week I went to the boss and said this guy is useless to me. The boss sat with him for 2 hours at his desk and he was fired the next day. I felt bad, the guy lost his job, but he was not absorbing any info and I was doing 2 jobs. We hired a guy who was just, well, weird. Didn't seem to do much but was always out and about taking to people. Whatever, not my department. Then I heard he got fired. He was asked to help the CEO with his computer. The guy walked into the executive offices, acted weird and like he knew everyone. Rude and inappropriate to the secretaries. Then walked into the CEO's office and took one look at his computer and said, "No wonder it's not working, Max sheet." Spent 10 minutes ripping into the CEO about his poor choice of computer and complaining about his job, then got asked to leave. Never saw him again after that. I was just an apprentice, but we were drilling holes using a mag drill underneath a bridge. New journeyman gets sent out from the hall and is given a brand new Haugen mag drill, a generator and a couple extension cords. Sets himself up, drills a hole and decides to go to the bathroom. He leaves his drill magnetized to the steel and goes up top to find the bathroom. On his way he walks past his generator and decides to turn it off and save gas while he's in the bathroom. As soon as he turns it off, his brand new mag drill drops and goes into the river. He was fired immediately. I was working at a big telecom company with headquarters in the northeast in a small town. The town had a couple nice hotels and restaurants that worked in conjunction with our company whenever we had events or large training groups coming in, so both parties were well acquainted with one another. At our annual kickoff event, there was a cohort of new hires who started the same week. One guy in sales shows up on Wednesday for his first day and proceeds to get very drunk at the evening cocktail hour. I saw him hit on a few people and get pretty sloppy, but figured he would get to his room and would only suffer the consequences of a hangover and his shame. Apparently that was wrong, as he got separated from everyone, stumbles back to the hotel, goes into the kitchen and gets undressed, then passes out on a prep table. He woke up to the general manager of the hotel and several execs from this publicly traded company standing over him and trying to get him clothed out of the kitchen. Dude was canned the next morning, obviously. I had a job at a car dealership. There was a guy who on his first day we asked him to run across the street to pick up our pizza order. He carried the pizza box sideways under his arm like you'd carry a book. When we opened the box up it was smooshed. Got fired that day. Second week of training maybe? Call center job had 4 weeks of training, unaffectionately known as death by PowerPoint. Guy has been okay and quite quiet so far, but comes in that morning with bloodshot eyes and a red face. The afternoon session he's rubbing his eyes and squinting. Tells the trainer it's because he forgot his glasses. She asks if he wants to sit nearer the front but he says he'll be okay. 5 minutes later he's asleep. Takes to shouts of his name and a nudge to wake him up. Trainer suggests he goes outside to get some fresh air and a drink of water. He argues a bit but she insists so he leaves the room. 2 minutes after that building security is at the door asking for his bag and jacket. He'd fell down the stairs. People sitting near him then say he smelled like vodka, and another one or two say they saw him going to the spa at lunch where we think he bought a half bottle. Company hired security, and part of that function was to drive a van of employees to the parking lot to pick up their cars after a long day of work. First run out, it's apparent he has no idea how to drive, and proceeds to crash into several parked cars on the street. We hired someone at the recommendation of another employee. After a day at the central office going over and signing off on all of our employment policies, their first day in the site ended up being a day we had a meeting. Our regional director came to make a point about something at a staff meeting and arrived 20 minutes or so before the meeting to greet everyone. They meet the new guy. New guy goes about doing some work. Meeting begins. New guy uses the restroom before we start. After going over a topic or two, the regional director wants to talk but asks where the new guy is. Me and another employee go looking around the site and the bathroom he was in is empty. The window was wide open, screen popped out, and a weed pipe left on the windowsill with a lighter, both still pretty warm. This MFAir met the regional director, went to the bathroom to get high, then got scared he'd be caught by the smell while sitting at the meeting and instead hopped out the upstairs window, ran out the back, climbed a fence, ran through someone else's yard, climbed another fence through, and circled the block back to his car and never came back. I know all of that because a coworker and I knew the girl he was dating at the time. She left him for doing this because she was the one that reached out to my coworker to get him recommended hired because he kept getting fired for smoking weed at jobs. 10 days. Worked at a cell phone store. He asked about a special high-end case we had, then took a pink one out back to put aside for his girlfriend. Pretty normal, we all did that for stuff we wanted. Except 3 days later he had a new pink case on his phone that he was showing off to all the customers. Another newbie who has worked all the days these things occurred noticed and counted the cases and compared them to what inventory said. Surprise surprise, we were one short. That was the end of that. He had only been with us 3 days. Cleaned up after his mistakes. Customer gave us her food back because it was a little raw. We had been waiting on a replacement oven, so that was normal for us during the week. We would warn customers when they ordered hot meals. This stupid man, he picked up her food and took a big bite that half of it was gone and then gave it back to her. "It is okay, eat it." He called her a name I cannot remember. She was stood in silence. I was frozen and the customer I was receiving money from was frozen and hiding his laughing. The owner told him to pack and leave but he would not. So the owner picked him up like a toddler by the armpits and carried him outside like a bad cat. Edit. Type double. This was 15 plus years ago. I got a job at a restaurant in a plaza as a busser. We had a training group to go over company culture blah blah blah, then lunch break, then actual training. One of the server trainees went to another restaurant in the plaza during lunch in her uniform, chugged a few drinks and walked out on the tab. Their manager came over during the second session, pointed her out, and she was fired immediately. Like the drinking is bad enough, but to do it in uniform and then not pay? Hilarious. Trained a guy in for 2 weeks as an aircraft fueler. He gets signed off and I go on my weekend. I get back to work and the first comment I hear is, "What did you do to your trainee?" Apparently he was coming down off of Xanax and acid. He was fueling the wrong flights, putting not enough fuel in them. Then he proceeded to fall asleep on the couch while drooling. Brought him to the office twice. Last time they handed him a piss cut and what he gave them was cold and clear. They watched him the next time and he dipped the cup in the toilet and handed it to them. Fired. A school I worked at, the network manager left and they asked if he would recommend the recently employed junior technician to fill his role. No way, of course. This was a desktop technician with no experience yet, no networking knowledge, no real anything to qualify jumping into a much bigger role after a couple of months. Long and short of it was that the school saw an opportunity to cut costs by not hiring in a replacement with experience at £40k and instead bumping some guy up from £18k to £21k. The network manager said it was a daft idea but they did it anyway after he left. The network fell over a couple of times, had to keep bringing in outside help, but what sealed it for the newly promoted lad was that he found the head teacher's corporate card in her office desk whilst re-imaging machines during the summer. For some reason he decided that he wouldn't get caught using the card for a load of porn subscription sites. No idea how he thought no one would notice. There's only half a dozen folks on site during the holidays so they zeroed in on him pretty quick. Well, that and he admitted it straight away. I worked in a grocery store in the coffee kiosk and we had just gotten a new hire. She said she'd worked in the coffee shop before and was highly qualified, which was what got her the position. So we went through her training and I asked if she wanted to try making a few drinks while it was dead for the refresher. She was cocky and said of course. I thought maybe she was just super rusty as she looked lost and confused with the drinks I was asking her to make. Maybe she was nervous. She refused to sit with the training books because she was qualified, and again I gave her the benefit of the doubt because I am a hands-on learner. Maybe she was, too. So I put her on drip coffee and dishes. She ended up breaking the hot water spigot on the drip coffee maker and didn't tell anyone. Just kept filling up cups and dumping it. She went on her break and all of a sudden, even with mats, the floor became a slippery disaster. We had to shut the maker off to get it to stop, and when no one fessed up to breaking the spigot, I went to the office to ask the store manager to look at the cams on our kiosk. She was on camera not only breaking the spigot, but on her break right then opening different items in the store, eating it and then putting the item back on the shelf. The manager took her into the office to let her know her shift was over and she was being terminated. She screamed her way out of the store, needing an escort. Turns out it was her first job and she thought you could just eat from the store on break. Small edit, spelling. We interviewed a contractor hire over video conference. The interview went great. We made an offer. They started 2 weeks later. Guy showed up for work. It wasn't the same guy I had interviewed. He had a different accent and couldn't answer simple questions about the job that he had answered in the interview. He must have hired someone to do the interview for him hoping we wouldn't notice. He got fired when he came in the next day. About 3 hours. New dude was hired to work in the repair shop, computers, printers, and other electronics, where I was working as the only woman in the shop. He decided that he liked my very long hair so much that he came up behind me, fondled my hair, and asked if he could smell it. How about hell no? Went straight to the supervisor, who shrugged it off. So I went to his boss, who shrugged it off. So I went to the boss over both of them, and she had the hair sniffer out the door before lunch. Lady came in to train for cashiering, obviously high on Drew Gus, and spent her breaks on her first day stealing dollar items and putting them in this little shopping bag she kept with her. She lasted about 5 hours before she was fired. Another year, a kid we hired for the holiday season was stealing the gift cards that came with the purchasing electronics items. So he wasn't stealing from us. He was stealing from the customer, and that was worse than stealing from the company. He lasted a week. Hired a teenager to sell cars with us. Second customer comes in heated about an issue. Instead of helping, he got snippy back, and within 10 minutes they are squaring up to fight. Glad it didn't happen, because that teenager is a fight or two away from making the UFC roster. I still follow him on Facebook. I was the driver trainer at Domino's. We had a new guy, just finished training him. He took a run and I knew it was a no-tipper from looking at the address on the screen. I had a book that I wrote down all the good and bad tip houses. He comes back and says to me, "What do you do when someone stiffs you?" Jokingly I replied, "Just cut the wheels left and give them a lawn job." He leaves on another sheety run. About 15 minutes later I see the manager on the phone staring daggers at me. She walks up to me and says, "Did you tell him to do that?" I said, "We were joking and laughing about it." She says, "Well, I just had to fire his stupid ass because he did it." I never caught any grief except a talking to. I was working in a restaurant and our district manager was in the building at the time. A girl who was in training was helping run plates to tables from the kitchen. She was only carrying one plate in each hand and making multiple trips for one table. The district manager tried to ask her if she would like him to show her how she can carry more than one plate at a time. She said no. The district manager asked her why she didn't want to learn how to do it better, more efficient. She basically told him, "I'm already good enough. I don't need to get better." So he fired her right there. It was her first day of training, lol. Came for training orientation. Disappears after lunch. Comes back, collects his belongings and tells us he failed his drug test. Mysteriously reappears at work 2 weeks later with a clean drug test. Turns out the CFO was his mom. I've had 2 fired before lunch on their first day, both warehouse staff. One was a temp who bragged to the person training him that he'd sued the last 2 companies he was placed with for injury and harassment, and he'd be looking to do the same to us. Employee came and reported the comment, and I walked him immediately out of the building and cancelled the temp placement. The other was a full-time employee who showed up to his first day in the warehouse without safety toe shoes. No problem, we gave him a pair of caps to wear. Later in the day he spotted an office employee in the warehouse and yelled at them for not having safety toes on and told them that if he had to wear caps, they had to wear caps. This happened to be the owner of the company he was talking to. He was also let go before lunch. 2013. Navy Boot Camp. Once in processing officially begins, you do not stop for sleep until every task is done. Uniforms, haircuts, custom shoe inserts, it feels interminable. But it does end, usually 24 hours later, sometimes longer. At the end, when you are good and exhausted and overloaded and confused and just want to start training, they sit 1,000 people down in a huge room and say, "If you lied on your application to get here, and you actually did use Drew Gus, no problem, just tell us now and you're good. But we have to know. We can't let you begin training until we know. Just raise your hand, no problem at all, we'll sort it out for you. You're here, you've made it." About 100 hands went up. They were removed from the group and never heard nor saw again. Time in Navy 3 days.